Welcome to Nothing Ventured with me, Aarish Shah. This is the podcast where we explore the people and stories that make up the tech and venture ecosystem. Don't forget to subscribe, like, rate, and share the podcast because it really helps us get the word out to more people who are curious about understanding even more about the world of venture capital. This season of Nothing Ventured is sponsored by Odin. Odin helps angels, VCs, and founders to raise and deploy capital seamlessly. You can structure your SPVs and now run your funds, handle capital calls, portfolio management more smoothly and easily in one place. Founders use Odin to raise their entire round in a few clicks by simply sending investors a link and receiving investments immediately. Odin works with over 5,000 investors and over 150 emerging fund managers and angel syndicates globally. Head to joinodin.com to learn more. That's joinodin.com. Hello and welcome to another episode of Nothing Ventured with me, Aarish Shah. Today, I was super excited to have in the studio with me Harry Slagel and Lucy Adams. Harry and Lucy are the co-founders of Martee, a business on a mission to make convenience food better globally by applying AI to the frontiers of retail technology. Since their inception last year, Martee have built a living lab network of 10 smart retail units across London. Using these IoT-enabled stores, they're developing an AI demand forecasting product using the data to train their convenience food solution. Prior to building Martee, Harry co-founded Plateaway, a restaurant meal kit marketplace, which ultimately exited to Get Foodo, and subsequently worked with both Founders Factory and Nesta as an entrepreneur in residence, whilst Lucy has a deep background in food and food research and public policy. Then the commercial team at fast growth delivery startup Wheezy, and as a founder in residence at Zinc. On today's episode, we talked about launching a business during lockdown and doing everything possible before deciding it was time to exit, becoming a co-founder off the back of a LinkedIn post, pivoting to demand forecasting in the food space to ensure that there's a balance of availability whilst minimizing waste, and how working with accelerators set themselves up for success. Let's get straight into it. Harry, Lucy, great to have you in the studio with me. As our audience will know, we've done a bit of a shift around, so we're switching out the way we kind of do our primer episodes. So it's going to be a bit of a quick fire, and I'll kind of go between the two of you. But start with, what was your first job?
I used to work in my local pub serving food and drinks, so very on brand.
Amazing.
My dad had a pushchair baby products business, and I helped push boxes through a warehouse.
I thought you were going to say you pushed babies.
No, not push babies. No, yeah, push boxes. But I also helped him. We used to do these 3D photos of like watching, so you could actually see the pushchairs on a website. And it sounds really simple now, but 15 years ago, it's quite innovative.
Excellent. And what did you do before you got into the tech and venture ecosystem?
So my first job out of university was working in public policy advisory. So I was working with government organisations like the Food Standards Agency and European organisations as well. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I started my career at Sky up in Leeds. So I helped do a lot of their product and UX, and then went into management consultancy, working on a number of different projects, high-profile projects for the public sector, digital transformation projects.
Okay, and what triggered your move into founding Martee?
Yeah, so before Martee, I had another business called Plateaway, and always wanted to do my own business, and thought of the idea of the start of COVID and launched that, and then now onto Martee. So
I didn't really know what I wanted to do out of university, dabbled in consulting, and then by chance was exposed to the startup world and fell in love. I've always been passionate about food and health and the fact that people should eat better food that also tastes great. So I've been sort of dabbling in startups for the last 2 or 3 years. Was at the rapid grocery company Wheezy in their early days and their growth days and the days in which they sold to Getter, as everyone did. I then was on an accelerator program before this, and then met Harry and thought, actually, this is what I want to do. So I came on board in June.
And what do you think you'd be doing if you weren't in venture?
Oh, good question. Probably still in management consultancy.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Probably working on I was working on some cool projects, but none of them were my own baby. So yeah.
Well, my mum's always thought I'd be a great chef. So I'd like to think that I might have gone down perhaps the slightly less tech-enabled venture-funded startup world regardless. So yeah, probably founding my own restaurant business, cooking great food.
Okay, and let's talk about Martee's quickly. What's a quick pitch? What are you solving? Who are your customers, and what's your traction?
Yeah, we're looking to help fresh food businesses find the perfect balance between availability and waste. If you order too much stock in terms of your inventory, you're going to have loads of waste. If you don't order enough, you're going to have empty shelves. So yeah, we're looking to solve that problem through an AI forecasting tool, which we've already having shown really impressive signs on our own store network, which we can talk about as well.
Excellent. Who are 3 people that you would love to have as investors in the business or on the board?
Yeah, so we've already got one really cool guy, Mark Lilly, the founder of Avocados. He's already an investor and a design partner of ours in the business. Would also like to have Julian Metcalf, would be great. He's the founder of Pret. And so I've already actually spoken to him at the start of this journey, so it would be good if he came on board at some point. And Stephen Bartlett. I think he'll be great. I actually met him at a Vodafone event a few years ago. But yeah, always love what he does. So I think it'll be quite cool.
Amazing. Anyone else you'd add?
Yeah, I think mine might be, it's probably similar but slightly different. I'm a big fan of Henry Dimbleby, coming from a more of a sort of food systems research background. I think what we're doing is very in line with the national food strategy, and I think that he would be a great addition to that team. Also, Obi Felton, who's a lesser known compared to Henry Dimbleby, but she was head of getting moonshots ready for Contact with the Public World at X. She came and did a chat when I was at university and really inspired me to get into tech. Amazing female founder and investor. I think she'd be a great addition to our board.
Excellent. And final question, pizza or pasta?
Pasta for me. Gotta have parmesan.
I had pasta for lunch, so I think I have to say pasta too.
Excellent. Okay, well, we're going to get into some detail on the business and some of your backgrounds during the main podcast coming up. So thank you so much in the meantime.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Lucy, Harry, great to have you in the studio with me. So let's dive straight in. Harry, you built Plateaway. And then after deciding that you'd taken the business as far as it could go, you exited to get Fudo, but then pretty quickly jumped into founding Martee's. I think it was less than a year. I'd love for you to share your journey at Plateaway with our listeners. And in light of the current market, I have no doubt that many founders are struggling with how they can take their businesses forward and may well be facing the sort of challenges that you face to grow further. What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, so Plateaway was a hell of a journey. So we started in the first lockdown in April 2020, and when everyone was stuck at home, you couldn't even get any Ocado or Tesco's online, and all restaurants were putting their ingredients in a box and sending it through the post. So we latched onto a bit of an opportunity where we built a website and could launch and help all restaurants in London launch nationwide. We secured a nationwide courier contract, scaled to over £1 million revenue in the first 6 months.
Amazing.
Signed up loads of different restaurants, was mental. Then we raised a VC round, grew even more, and then it was pretty much a roller coaster throughout that whole journey, in kind of demand from the consumer side, but also from the restaurant side as well. When people wanted to go back to the restaurants, there was less of a need for it. But then they found out when lockdown kind of was over and people went back, people were scared to go out, so they still need to doing it. So it was a massive, massive journey. And ultimately, I call it a semi-exit. We got to the point where we managed to sell our assets. Mm-hmm. It still actually lives on. You said it went to get Fudo. And just, learnt loads. I think for what we try to do is we try to build a marketplace for a brand new market. Almost if you can imagine building Deliveroo just as takeaways started, we were doing it for restaurant meal kits. So it was very, very quite hard to do in those times.
And I wonder, like, had COVID not COVID not have happened, do you think it would have been as quickly scaled as it was, or do you think that actually, do you think that was what kind of produced?
I think everyone stuck at home, I think, accelerated the growth. But you've got existing businesses like HelloFresh and Gusto, which they were meal kits, but they weren't restaurant meal kits. Restaurants' meal kits were more of a niche speciality from that regard. Obviously, COVID that's grown those businesses. Like, for example, let's take Pasta Evangelist, right? They started right at the start. They were specific in pasta as a meal kit, and they just grew exponentially. So it was a boost. It boosted us. But yeah, massive learnings throughout that whole process of how to do everything from a startup, the good, the bad, the ugly. Yeah. Yeah, it was a fantastic experience.
And so for founders today who, we're in the midst of probably, well, it's actually a normalization, I guess, of VC. We had a lot of, frenetic energy over the last 3, 4, 5 years. But there are no doubt lots of founders out there, possibly some not even necessarily in the mindset that actually they've got to change what they do or they've got to think about their business differently. But, we certainly see lots of businesses that are coming up to the edge of their runway, thinking that they're going to be able to raise again in the same sort of market environment as they saw in 21, 22, maybe not thinking about, well, actually, do I need to pivot? Do I need to actually rationalize the business? Do I need to actually shut down the business? Right? Like, so I guess what I'm asking almost is, like, at what point were you like, actually, we've taken it as far, and how did you come to that decision, I guess?
Don't give up too early. Like, it took us a while to end up having to say, okay, we need to sell our assets, right? Ultimately, we raised our VC round December 21. Mm-hmm. Then we
who was the investor there?
So Hatch Ventures.
Yeah. Okay.
So they were fantastic. They were really supportive throughout the whole process. Initially, when we got the money in, and then when we had to sell our assets, so that I rate them very highly. And we had a number of angels invested in it as well as a crowd fund that finished off with Seeders. So we closed that round, December 21, and then scaled the business a bit more. We diversified into food gifts when we kind of realised that restaurant meal kits might not be as much of a big demand. There was still quite good demands. We launched a subscription service as well. We tried different things. Like the last thing we tried was actually launching kits with some high influencers, and we actually brought some of the production of the meal kits in-house, which was a whole another ball game that initially obviously we stayed out of because we were a light asset, but then we went into it in the end, which was a good learning, but at the same time showed how much of a massive pain that was.
Yeah.
And then we found a buyer that made sense, and that was a deal that was going on in the background for a couple of months, still trying to try loads of different initiatives. And the technology and the IP in that sold to them, and it's in some capacity still going today. So yeah, I suppose my advice to founders is don't give up, look at the different opportunities, speak to your customers more, but then ultimately if you can't end up raising another round, look for different plans of is there a good market fit for someone to buy the product that could use it in a different way. So yeah, we managed to do that, and we managed to do it in a way that was good for all the investors that invested through SEIS and EIS as well. So I think, look, even though it wasn't as big as it was meant to be, I think for me it was a massive learning curve, and I ended on a good note. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, we're going to talk about kind of what came after that as well. And Lucy, presumably you didn't know Harry during those days, right? So, we've all heard about the metrics around how many ventures fall over because of founders falling out, like a lot apparently.
Yeah.
And all that entails around morale, the cap table, investor confidence, everything else. So I'd love to actually understand what your co-founding journey was with Harry, the journey that you went on, and how you both knew that A, this was a business that you wanted to build, that needed to be built, I guess, and B, it was a business that you both felt that you wanted to build, right? Because often, the problem is, Harry may have had a vision to essentially build a number of stores. You may have had the vision to do the analytics part, but how did you know that you were both looking to go on this journey together and head in the same direction, I guess?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think our founding story is probably quite unusual. So I actually didn't know Harry at all, and I saw a job posting for a co-founder that Harry did on LinkedIn and thought, that sounds really up my street. And I think for me, the reason why I believed that it was up my street and was confident in that from quite early on in terms of the concept was that I'd spent 6 months prior to that doing the Zinc accelerator program. So I'd essentially spent quite a long time soul searching about, I knew I wanted to start a food business. I knew I was passionate about improving the face of food in the UK and improving from a health angle as well as a taste perspective. And I was sort of looking for the right vehicle to do that within. And yeah, I had a lot of ideas about what I thought would work and what didn't. And actually the idea of working with smart fridges, as well as the idea of working in a forecasting capacity, had been floated through my ideation process, and they kind of, I'd never sort of dismissed them as ideas. So when I heard that this had some gravity behind it, and saw what kind of Harry was looking for, that for me was a really good signal. Obviously the main thing with founding any business is the co-founder, and equally, having done the Zinc process, I had a really good sense of what I was looking for in a co-founder, because I'd spent a lot of time essentially speed dating lots of other potential co-founders. And I think one of my huge take-homes from that was just realizing that you don't want to found with somebody who is the same as you in terms of the way that they work, the things that they're good at, but you do want to found somebody who's got aligned values. And I think for us, like, that couldn't be more true. So we have a really good division of labor, which is essential when you're so early on. You do not want to be fighting over jobs. We cover off all bases pretty exclusively, I'd say, exhaustively, sorry. And then I'd say also we just get on really well, which when you're spending the amount of time together that we do is really important.
It's so we've had a couple of guests on the podcast in the past, VCs typically, but you know the kind of metric that they churn out is, a startup and investor relationship often lasts longer than the average UK marriage, which is quite depressing, to be honest. But the co-founding relationship obviously is part of that, right? And I've been in businesses where that co-founding relationship has fallen apart. Thankfully, in one instance, actually, COVID was a kind of help rather than a hindrance to that, because it just allowed everyone to say, you know what, let's just get on with it and do what needs to be done. But equally, I've seen it happen acrimoniously, and the sort of fallout from that. I think what you say about aligned values and differentiated skill sets is super important. In fact, when I was kind of researching both of you for this podcast, and for the audience, Harry's actually a neighbor, so I know probably more about him than I should do. When I was researching both of you, I was like, okay, so Harry just felt like, kind of pure startup guy, product, always been in that sort of tech product environment, and then obviously with Plateaway, whereas you really did come from quite a different pedigree, right? Like you as you said, you were working, in policy development and very much in that kind of food sector. How it's often very difficult when you have someone who's highly, should we say, industry focused, which you were, versus someone who's probably more on the commercial product tech side of things. How did you find that marriage? Like, has that been? Do you kind of act as a little bit of a voice of reason, maybe, when there's some crazy stuff going through Harry's head, or does it, or actually are you as crazy as each other?
I think so. I definitely don't subscribe necessarily to that model that some of the early stage accelerators have. So like the entrepreneur first model is very much like techie meets commercial person. Yeah. But I think that when I talk about complementary skills, what we really see working well is actually a pragmatist and an optimist. It's that kind of like, I think there's...
Wait till you get a CFO and we become the realist.
Yeah. Then I'm really easygoing and open-minded. But yeah, I think look, you have to be able to disagree, and we definitely do disagree, but that's to be expected, and we're able to do that in a really productive and constructive way. But I think... Yeah, I think that I bring a lot of structure and clarity and kind of, I suppose, realism or pragmatism to what we talk about. So Harry will have these crazy ideas, and sometimes they are pure genius, and sometimes I need to tell him to stop. But I think that's what makes it work, right? Like, you've got to get the ideas from somewhere.
I bring the scrappiness, and let's just go.
But that's super important, right? Because at early stage, again, you can get really distracted by, we've got 30,000 different opportunities here. Let's go after all of them. Whereas actually what you often need, and I certainly had this problem because I didn't have a co-founder, was this one. Let's do this really well until we figure out that it isn't this. And then, yes, we should experiment with other stuff, but we shouldn't dilute our attention so far that actually we're not delivering on any of the the kind of projects or product strategies that we have, right?
The other thing that's probably worth mentioning is our CTO, Pedro, who has joined us more recently. But he, obviously having 3 people is another dimension to that kind of decision-making relationship around the tech. So I think quite often having that, you can then have a little bit more of a democracy as well when there's 3 of you to make decisions, which I think is another really good kind of agents of decision making within our team.
Yeah, no, look, I think it is important, and those first kind of hires, whether it's your CTO, whether it's product, whatever, super important. But also understanding, I guess, like, who are the 0 to 1 people, who are the 1 to many people, like at every stage that kind of changes as well. But let's talk about Martee's, right? Because on the face of it, if you go on your website, etc., it looks like the initial product set isn't that different to the sort of vending machines you see in a number of offices, and maybe the more advanced kind you see in Asia, like a lot of kind of Japanese storefronts seem to have this sort of tech. So what is different about Martee's, and why do you think that now is the time for this solution to come to market?
Yeah, well, that's kind of where we started.
Yeah.
We started building, let's say, an innovation on a vending machine, which was a smart fridge and micro market. Basically an unattended retail model in different locations across
which is what
London.
Bodega did in the US, I guess, right?
Yes, a similar model. There's Farmer's Fridge in the US, and there's a number of different players in Europe. And essentially what a smart fridge is a fridge with a big digital display on the front. You can track the inventory inside, and people can come up, select what they want, tap your card, open it and grab the stuff. It works fully on unattended model. They're better than vending machines because you can grab more things, so it's better average order value, and they're just more intelligent of how they work. So we started with the view, so we're backed by Founders Factory, a venture builder and a VC, and Nesta, the UK government's arm for social change and innovation.
Know them both very well, yes.
And one of their main objectives, Nesta, is to reduce obesity by half by 2030. And where one startup was being backed as part of Founders Factory and Nesta's joint mission studio. And the goal initially was to scale a network of unattended retail stores in different location sets in initially London and then the UK.
And presumably based on that mission to promote healthier eating.
Make healthy food more accessible,
right,
etc., etc. We launched the first site in June, acquired a competitor and scaled to 10. So we had this fast track growth, which has been amazing. Then we realised it's really hard to do fresh food, especially do fresh food profitably in this setup.
And presumably in the current kind of market conditions where supply chains have become actually quite difficult to manage, and we're seeing supermarket shelves without fresh produce, right? Even today.
Exactly.
You and I both know the Waitrose down the road rarely has anything that you want in it.
And that's the balance between availability and waste, right? And you want stuff on the shelves so the consumers have what they want and it's brand reputation. If you have too much, then you're going to have a load of food waste, which is obviously also bad. So we came to realize that. So we learned a problem firsthand, and that led us down to the path of, okay, how do we solve this? And that's when we lent more into a lot of research that we did, a forecasting tool. To predict the demand across our sites, to find that perfect balance between availability and waste. And that tool's really developed and it's surpassing our expectations. We've had about 81% reduction in food waste across our sites.
It's incredible.
And a 16% profit uplift. And the goal is to advance that forecasting tool using machine learning and AI. And really now we want to allow not just us, but loads of different businesses, food businesses in the UK and globally eventually, to use our tool to find that perfect balance between availability and waste.
And I mean, Lucy, from your perspective, right? So given that this was, as you say, like a joint mission between Founders Factory and Nesta, and the initial mission to reduce obesity, how does that then play in? Because again, like that's a slight pivot from that mission, right? Surely.
Yeah, I think you can go about these things different ways. I think you can either deliver the food, which is a really great way of achieving impact, but subject to a lot of scale.
Yep.
Or you can take that kind of picks and shovels approach and actually recognize systemically there are barriers to delivering choice for consumers, and that doesn't just mean healthy food, but it means a choice that includes a spectrum of healthy products. it may well include a choice of perishable products as well, which are, for many reasons harder to deliver. So the way that we see it, and the way that our investors also see it, is that actually by enabling others to deliver a better food offering in essentially like smaller, more rationalized store settings, that is unlocking a huge capability of change, far bigger than most retail businesses.
It's kind of by stealth, right? If you try and attack, we're attacking obesity, often doesn't work because you've got to convince people that, they need to change. You're trying to change behavioral habits targeted at a certain person. Whereas if you actually change overall that flow of information and of food and so on and so forth, then actually the net result is that you decrease or you increase the availability of fresh food and healthy choices, and by nature over time that leads to healthier outcomes in the population, right?
Yeah, and that's really our theory of change. It's around making the delivery on the retail side of those products more viable. And that in time will create that environment which is more conducive to healthier choices. And obviously a huge amount of change needs to happen in society, but we can't cover everything, and actually that is a big chunk of that pie.
And I think we're going to by providing different businesses, not just ourselves, with the tools, and we're looking to wrap it into a B2B SaaS product, to be able to predict their stock and their inventory at scale, to find that perfect balance between availability and waste. We're going to have a much bigger impact and be a much bigger commercial business than scaling a network of machines ourselves.
Yep.
But the good thing is
and probably more capital efficient. That's the CFO in me.
Exactly, yeah, 100%.
There is
also a lot more scalable, but at the same time, like, we're about 70% profitable already on our 10 sites already. We hopefully by the end of Q1 will be 100% profitable.
Yeah.
We're going to keep that going as a cash cow for our business, but two, as an agile testing lab to then develop this tool. As well as that, we've already got our first design partner and customer. Avocado has 6 high traffic stores across London as well. So we're in a really good position to evolve this product and then allow everyone to use it.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to introduce you to our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Emerge One. Emerge One CFOs partner with VC-backed founders from seed to Series B to manage and raise capital and plan how it should be deployed, controlling cash so that they can do what they do best to scale strategically. You can find them at emergeone.co.uk. That's emergeone.co.uk. Okay, let's get back to the episode. Yeah. And you're in the middle of raising, I think, seed round at the moment. Is that right?
Pre-seed round, yeah. So raising pre-seed round, £800,000. We're looking to raise. We opened it just before Christmas. So yeah.
And that's basically, we're looking to grow our technical arm, so grow our data team, and essentially just really nail this product. We've already done a great job of kind of giving that a proof of concept, testing that in our store network. And the store network really does provide an amazing testing ground for not only the proprietary data that it delivers on actual real-time sales, but it allows us to test and learn a lot with the way that we execute things. And we've already learned a huge amount about the sort of novelties of working in a more rationalized store setting.
I mean, I would imagine over time, as that predictive analytic, or as those predictive analytics improve and as the algorithm improves and probably becomes slightly more self-learning in any case, you could probably port that across to different verticals, right? Like, I mean, I imagine you wouldn't be essentially stuck. Not that grocery is a small category by any stretch of the imagination, but you could probably see it moving across into different verticals.
100%.
Right?
Like, we're focused on solving this problem for one particular customer.
Yeah.
Right. In a niche focus first. Let's get that as a go-to-market. Let's scale that, and then this can be up to loads of different types of food businesses.
But we both come from the food sector
yeah.
and food systems research, and this is just such a cross-cutting problem. And the technology is becoming available. AI is being applied to just about everything right now, but this is a really great application of it. Equally, I think that the challenges for food businesses, for anyone that deals with consumers, are changing because people are shopping and eating and living differently. So being able to kind of consolidate across channels and therefore to make better forecasts that take into account lots of variables is really, really pertinent.
Yeah. Well, look, yeah. There's a number of different ways that I'm not going to give away our trade secrets of how we do it, but
No, you leave that to someone posting on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, 100%. Yeah. That's funny. Our data science actually did that last night. I got to remove it. I was like, that's our IP. But yeah, we're essentially getting the transaction history and mapping it with different types of data. And that's really giving us a great output of what the future looks like.
What it strikes, like, again, it strikes me that it's such a timely solution. And the reason I say that is pre-Christmas, I remember listening, I think I was listening to a politics podcast, because I think that's the only podcast I can listen to. If I listen to anything else in tech, I kind of might feel a bit guilty. But no, so one of the problems that a lot of supermarkets faced was they couldn't predict, because the supply chains and logistics processes had basically extended out as a result of Brexit and various other sort of, supply chain issues caused by the kind of global conditions that we're in at the moment. They were having to book and order produce 3 months earlier than they would normally have done for the Christmas period. And that led to massive problems in how they could forecast or how they should be forecasting what they needed and when they should be buying and so on and so forth. And it strikes me that, as you build up that data, and it may take a few years to build up sufficient enough data sets to start being able to generalize, but that then becomes such a massive tool for for stores to be able to actually stock the produce that they do need when they need it, not just the healthy, but like across their whole, every category that they have, right? And especially in an environment where, you've got supply chains that are breaking left, right, and center.
Definitely, 100%. And like we're not the only startup that's approaching this. There's a company called Guac in America. They've just raised $2 million off the back of Y Combinator. They're applying a similar techniques, but to big grocery, whereas we're focusing on the smaller store.
Yeah.
Which we feel, we have a hunch that it's a more exciting opportunity, and actually will be easier to do. So yeah.
Yeah, and they probably have a need, don't have the sophistication internally to be able to deal with a lot of this stuff as well, right? So actually being able to buy off the shelf makes life easier.
Yeah, the honestly, like, the benefits of having a network in which to test that and iterate with that and be able to control what the customer sees and monitor what is on shelf remotely is just, it's fantastic. It just means we can build so quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, the subtleties of the way that you would forecast in a more rationalized store setting are, really quite relevant to what we're building, and it's a different angle on this big problem. But I think it's, there's a lot of opportunity to be had here.
I think it's a massive, I said this before, but us owning our own network to be able to build this gives us such an advantage to be able to accelerate this growth. Yeah,
well, you have proprietary data that you can learn and train on, right? Like you aren't having to go pick up you're not having to find a half a dozen customers that you can sell in on a pilot basis and tell them, well, we can't actually do anything at the moment because we don't have the data. We need your data to be able to tell you what we need to do, etc. So you're actually able to build the data set and the analytics before going out to commercial customers and going for that. So just changing tack a little bit, right? As someone that has been through and worked with accelerators, some of their portfolio companies over the last 8 years, as I have, I definitely have very mixed feelings about them. I've been through Founders Factory myself, very close to a number of people in the team. David Hickson has been on the podcast before. I remember still back in 2015 as, the first business in the first cohort in Founders Factory, sitting 10 foot away from Brent Hoberman and feeling quite excited, having just got off the boat from Papua New Guinea. But I'd love to understand from your perspective what accelerators and incubators are actually good for, right? What should founders look out for when they're considering them? What sort of founders should look to work with them, right? Because again, it often gets said, the only accelerator you ever really want to be with is Y Com, right? But actually that's not necessarily true depending on the sort of nature of the business and what you're trying to achieve. So yeah, I'd love to get your perspectives on that.
First of all, love David and Lizzie as well. They're both
big shout outs to the Founders Factory team. I
think my experience from there has been incredible. I think coming from my last business where I had to put a chunk of my savings into it, and it being, look, startups are risky, right? You don't know where they're going to go. And for this one, build something without any risk to my personal savings, but then really be able to focus on what you want to do best, which is figuring it out and doing the research. And
so you would have been part of the venture studio as opposed, right?
Accelerator, yeah, venture studio. So we went in at the start. We got a budget to kick it off. Essentially turn an idea into reality. And I suppose that takes the pressure off of like having to, I suppose, generate revenue straight away. You can speak to loads of people, understand, okay, is this the right market to go after first, and really like figure out where to go. At the same time, you can move fast. Like we launched our first site in June pretty quickly, and I started in March. So I think it was fantastic, and the support around you as well from product, data science, legal, accountancy, everything around that means that you don't have to, I suppose, pay over the odds to different people at that stage or really scrappy.
Or do it yourself.
And you can focus on building the business, which is just like, it shouldn't be underestimated in those early days.
100%.
There's enough firefighting as it is. I'd say, I mean, aside from the obvious fact of the money, which is just, great, and the support, I mean, it really does depend on the kind of program that you embark on, because like the Venture Builder Studio is fantastic in the sense that they've essentially, Founders Factory and Nesta, de-risked an idea. They've taken it through their own personal due diligence process and said, actually, this is an interesting idea, this is an interesting market. And then they've kind of de-risked the founders as well, because they bring in the founders into that environment. So you feel like your odds are quite good as an individual going into that setting, but they take a very small cohort. So on the flip side, I mean, I have experience of being part of Zinc, which for those of you who don't know, is a little bit like entrepreneur first in the way that it's run. They take in 60, 70 aspiring founders, pre-idea, pre-co-founder. And
always thematic as well, right? Like so.
Yeah.
So each cohort works on a specific theme: mental health, food, whatever.
Yeah, and they're impact led as well. So that adds another dimension to it. Pros and cons, obviously, of both. But yeah, in that environment, you're very much, the things you get out of it are quite different, because you're not given capital up front to invest in a business. You're giving a stipend. And the idea is that within that time and that space, you find your idea, you find your co-founder. So it really depends on what the thesis of the VC is. But I think I got a huge amount of clarity from that process as well. Although very different to Founders Factory. The other thing I think you get by working with investors from day one who have seen so many early stage companies is, they've seen it happen before. And as much as like you've got to learn from making your own mistakes, like I don't want to reinvent the wheel if I don't need to. Just having that sort of voice in your ear that is truly on side because they have given you money already, is fantastic. And yeah, I mean, I highly rate the Founders Factory team.
And the fact that we had Nesta as well, so you've got two organizations that's helping you from the start, like Founders Factory from commercial side, right, go and turn this business into a unicorn, right, Nesta from go and make a massive impact in the world. And I look at them as like two angels or sometimes two devils on the shoulder, going like this and pulling you to either side. I just think it's second to none. And like internally in Nesta as well, got a shout out to Alex Gilbert. She's been amazing from the start. I think we've also got access to the behavioural insights team that used to be part of the cabinet office. So that's been like hugely amazing to like get a business to where it is now. I think it's for me, I would do it again without a heartbeat.
And presumably Plateaway didn't go through that process, right? Like
no, that was me and my brother started it in the height of lockdown, chucked our savings in, grew it. And like the first 6 months, I was like, okay, I didn't even know anything about venture. It was like we did like £1 million worth of revenue, and then an advisor to us that was like a friend was like, guys, you should raise money. And I was like, how'd you do that? So it was mad. It was like,
that wasn't me, I don't think.
No,
but I was we didn't know each other that well.
Didn't know you could do that and how you did that. And then we went on that journey to build it. So completely different experience, kind of just figuring out how you do stuff on the way.
But it feels like that's a great kind of fit in the sense that you've gone through a founding journey yourself. You've made mistakes, you've learned, you've done some amazing things. You're able to bring that experience into the studio, so you already know, where are the pain points, what happened. But then you've got the additional support, I guess, from the Founders Factory team and the Nesta team, both on, I guess, the product, on the impact, as well as the commercial, to be like, okay, well hold on, do you really think you should be taking money at this valuation, or from a data science perspective, actually, do you want to focus on this versus that? What are the right things to look at? It gives you, if nothing else, it validates. You can get that ongoing validation of your idea from a third party without sort of,
it gives you that
living in your
toolkit.
own
Like
head.
I remember the first 2-3 months, I was probably annoying the team at Founders Factory because I'm like, I need someone to speak to check that. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I was just, you kind of, because it was just me for the first 2 months. I was inside your own head thinking, is this the right thing? Is this the right thing?
Yeah.
And just an amazing soundboard. To be able to do
Who's
that.
because the head of the venture studio is I'm blanking on his name now, although I do know him, but really good guy. But I remember meeting that venture studio team, and they were like going through a ton of ideas at the time, and just the process that they were going through was like very, very massive. Like, so they were, yaying or naying, I guess, on whether a product makes sense, and then who would we get to run it, and how would that work, and so on and so forth. So but the thing is, that's their job, right? Like, that's what they're doing 24/7.
Yeah.
So they have insight into, okay, well, who is the right founder for this? Like, what is the right founder for this sort of product look like? What sort of background should they probably have come from, et cetera, et cetera.
Before Word of Money's chucked at it, they've validated the product for a market with the right founder kind of fit.
Yeah.
Right. Which obviously, as Lucy said, it kind of makes your odds a lot better.
Yeah.
And even when I was in there, when I then had to look for a co-founder, having that name Founders Factory and Nesta.
Yeah,
kind
I
of
was like,
key
this is
people.
legit. Like, it's not just some random dude posting on LinkedIn.
So and I think that's everything. Teams everything at this early stage. So,
100%,
so yeah, I think it's fantastic.
Okay, so you're both advocates of accelerators. That's good to know. To know. And I guess, like, final question on that, and maybe just sort of playing off of that. So had it not have been Founders Factory Nesta backed on LinkedIn, do you think you'd have still applied?
Yeah, I think I would. I mean, at the point I was at,
That's a right answer.
Look at you, Blair.
no. I mean, you see a lot of random things on LinkedIn, right? It's not because of the venture, of course not. But would I have taken it seriously, I suppose, is the question. I think I would, because of the point that I was at and the kind of clarity that I had at that point, and because of the fit of the concept. But certainly, I mean, we've hired a fantastic team, again, because there's a lot of rubbish to sift through online, and I think it stood out to me because of that. But no, I think Harry and I were destined to find each other.
That's amazing. Well, listen, Harry, Lucy, it's been absolutely incredible having you here on the podcast with me. For our listeners, where's the best place for them to find you online? You're on LinkedIn, clearly. Twitter, where can they find you? And where can they learn more about Martees?
I don't use Twitter. I look at Twitter, but I don't use it. But
Martee.co.uk.
Yeah, Martee.co.uk and Harry Slagel on Twitter.
And Lucy Adams on LinkedIn. I don't use Twitter either.
Yeah, well, apparently it's called X. I
Sorry.
haven't quite made the move
Haven't
myself.
checked, haven't looked.
Yeah, haven't made the move myself. But look, thank you so much for joining me in the studio today. It's been an absolute blast. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it.